Thank you to BQE, the makers of BQE Core, for their support of this episode. BQE Core is the software that makes it easy to manage your projects and people for maximum productivity and ultimate profitability. Learn more at bqe.com.
So Cormac, I'm coming to you live from a wireless connection to satellites in space. Uplink, downlink, all the links. It's pretty incredible. It's the final frontier
Uh,
too.
don't get me started.
Final tears.
I would start nerding out on the new Star Trek TV show, but it's not.
Oh, okay.
Moving on.
Yeah. Moving on. Yeah, so trying out Starlink, the SpaceX internet connectivity setup, and working remotely this week, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. It does need a clear view of the sky, which I don't always have when you're out in the free world, but in the wild. But for the times when I do, or when the satellite is in a clear view, location in the sky, it's pretty incredible to get the internet speed that I do get, both down and up. So that's pretty cool.
So I won't say that I'm jealous, but the word that I'm thinking of sounds a whole lot like jealous. So let's just call it jealous.
I can't think of the word exactly. Yeah.
Oh no! I mean, it's just like that really is the dream of like pure mobility. Just and I know what you're doing. And I don't know if you want to share with listeners or not, but what's awesome about it, and just the fact that you've gone from Southern California and you're on a road trip, and in a couple of days you're going to be in a Glacier National Park and just all of these places, but you're still working and you're still able to work and still be able to enjoy and everything else. And just that like sense of freedom of being able to like operate wherever. And we've talked about like, what does the future office look like? Well, it may not be for everybody, but what you're doing is an option. It's being
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
mobile.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I mean, I tell you a little bit about what happens. Like some people can get Starlink right now and some people can't, and it really has to do with the saturation in your area. So LA is a highly saturated area, I have to say, and I was not able to get it until maybe late 2023 based on my home address. So, I start like YouTubing this and trying to figure out what other people are doing. And basically, depending on your quote unquote home base, you can get you can basically jump the line based on the level of saturation or lack of saturation in a given area. So my parents are in Southern Oregon. They bought a piece of property and they're out there right now. And so I used their address, so I cheated the system, and I got it in like 3 days when I did it like that. So if you have the ability to search other addresses, and you know what, I don't even think it needs to be your address, but what you do need to be able to do is when you activate it for the first time, you have to activate it from that location. So I know like this one guy I saw on YouTube, he ordered it in Palm Springs, and he doesn't live in Palm Springs, but that's where he was. He's also out on the road, and he used a golf course address to do it. And so he just drove to that golf course after he received it and activated it there. And so what just recently happened was Starlink came out with a thing they call portability, which it basically enables you to roam anywhere with the Starlink setup. And they prioritize roamers lower than people with actual addresses. And there are some caveats to the whole system until they put more satellites in the sky, right? But so I do expect this to improve over time. But for those who are roaming, basically it gives you, for I think it's an extra $25 a month, it gives you the ability to basically, live remotely and connect to the internet with high speed data up and down, and do whatever you want to do, like actually work remotely and not have to be at a Starbucks or at a library or running off a cellular signal, because a lot of times when you're out in the middle of nowhere, there is no cell signal, right? I've run into this many times. And so previously, what a lot of van lifers and RVers were doing was getting cell boosters, but those don't work if there's no cell signal to boost. It can only amplify what already exists. But they were also basically forced to have all of the different cellular plans. So they had to have a T-Mobile plan, they had to have an AT&T plan, they had to have a Verizon plan. And so
Basically,
depending on where they
jump
were,
from signal to signal.
yeah, whoever has the best signal, that's the one you're going to throw into your phone. So you're always swapping SIM cards and doing all this stuff, and that sounded terrible. So this is a pretty cool option. You get a dish. I think I can't remember what they call it. They call it Dishy for short, but it's like Dishy McDish face kind of a thing.
Do we call it a dish? Do we call it a dish because it's square?
Yeah, it's kind of a lunch tray shape, right? The old one was a dish. The first version was a round version. Now it's kind of this round rectangle, and it's got this motorized, satellite tracking motor in it, so it automatically points it in the right direction. And you get a hard line into the router, and then from the router you can connect wirelessly. And they also have like an Ethernet adapter if you wanted to plug it into a switch or and connect multiple hardline Ethernet devices. So it's pretty sweet, I have to say. Just a couple days into this so far, and it's pretty awesome. So that's the update from the road.
So I just looked, and my new address won't be available till 2023 residentially. However, if I purchased one for an RV, then I can get one now.
Oh, interesting. So that was not an option when I ordered. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, nice.
Before I make a fool of myself. Yep. Nope. Yes, that's it. It is true.
Yeah.
I have verified, and I have 59 minutes and 43 seconds, 42, 40, no.
And so you can spend $750 or whatever on the hardware. I mean, it's not cheap.
$687.94. And then the service itself is $135 a month.
Yeah, it's $110 if you stay in one location, and it's an additional $25 if you want the portability feature.
So let me ask you this. I mean, say for instance, you are only using Starlink. I don't know. Maybe you do like one long trip per year or something like that in the RV.
Yeah.
You use it for a month. Can you only get an area? I mean, can you only get like a plan that you only pay 1 month, or are you pretty much locked into the $135 per month service?
Yeah, you can. So you can turn it off, and it is calendar months. So if you're going to start using it toward the end of the month, you would have to probably pay for 2 months, to do that. But if you're only going to use it during a month, you can just turn on portability for that month and then opt back out of it while you're at home. And so you could totally use this. My plan is to use this as our home internet system as well, and while I'm at home, so that I'm not paying, double internet service. So we'll see how that goes. That's my plan at this point.
Here's something interesting, and you know this well. What's interesting is that there's more. I'm looking at the availability map, and Los Angeles is on a wait list. Then there's like and as you are living it right now, which is kind of interesting. But almost all of the Midwest and East Coast is not in coverage. It's on a wait list right now. But pretty much if you were to draw kind of a line that looks like it sort of, no, not quite follows the Mississippi River, but let's just say the Mississippi River is kind of like the dividing line if you go to the East Coast, from that line to the East Coast, it's pretty much not covered at all. And on the, from that line to the West is pretty much all covered. Although, I could at least get it to go to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Yay!
And like they're launching these satellites all the time. And what's interesting from the photos that I've seen, and I'm just, this is like skimming the headlines of an article, so I have not dug deeply into it, but I've seen the photos, and it looks like they take up like 200 or 300 of these satellites at one time and deploy them. They're very tiny, so it basically creates a low orbit. I think they're like geosynchronous. They're kind of staying in a similar position as the Earth spins, and they're very small, and they kind of cast a net, and their coverage map looks like hexagons, right? And each hexagon, I'm assuming, is one satellite. But maybe it's more than that, based on, this is the saturation part that I don't fully understand, which is how many people in a given area can have Starlink and still get decent speeds from one satellite, or is it multiple per zone? I'm not quite sure how that works yet, but yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's only going to continue to get better over time, right? They're launching these and filling the space with space junk satellites that connect global wireless internet for everybody. And I'm pretty sure that when Musk was talking about this, when they started off, it's like, this is one of the ways they are going to fund the trips to Mars. They're like, we're going to build global wireless satellite internet for everybody, and the money that goes into that is going to then fund trips to Mars, is kind of the idea. So they're using this technology to fund other technologies to do other even bigger things.
So that $300 billion of personal wealth isn't kicking in.
That's not money in the bank. Come on. Yeah. So anyway, there's the update. Maybe future updates in the future. That's where future updates come from. And I'll let you know how it goes. But so far, so good. It's pretty cool.
One of the good things is that you're not necessarily, you don't have to worry about doing Revit or anything, but it would be interesting to see how, so like, I have and see, that's why I need to borrow your rig. So just to purely testing, not,
just for testing purposes. Yeah.
Yeah. I won't enjoy any of my travels. It will be pure science. Data collection.
Cormac, I can spare you because my wife does that. And so you don't even have to burden yourself with this.
No, I mean, you need a wider
opinion.
Exactly. And I'm curious whether or not it will connect to our system, our remote system, like and be able to log into the server and all that other stuff. So there's only one way for me to find out,
which includes you driving to the West Coast, not the other way around, to make that happen. Yeah.
I say we meet in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I get to show you the wild of Michigan, and then you hand over the keys and I'm good.
All right. Future updates will be in tow.
Sure. Hey, I know that we just, did a quick update on, the whole me getting the house moving thing and everything else. But I did want to, just throw one more thing out there. Even though we're living in, and I think I've said this before, a 985 square foot house. Yeah, that's small. But, and we've been here for 14 years. My God, we've got a bunch of stuff.
It's amazing, right? And I think we've mentioned this before, but as much space as you have, you will fill it, no matter. Even if you were to go into like a 5,000 square foot house for some reason, you would probably fill that too. Like, it's just like the normal mode of most people. You see all these pictures of modern architecture and minimalism, and you're always like, where's their stuff? Because these pictures are not real. These people don't have any stuff.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm just amazed at how much stuff we have. And then, of course, now the question is do we really need that stuff? Have you seen that stuff in the 14 years we've been here? Do you still use that stuff? Do you need it?
Right.
Does it have to
Yeah,
come with
because
us?
moving stuff is terrible. So it's better to move without it if you don't need it.
I totally agree with you. But anyway, yeah. So I just small observation of now the moving portion or the packing up portion of this move is just how amazed, gobsmacked I am of how much stuff a small tiny house can actually hold.
Yeah, you just accumulate it so slowly over time that you don't even realize it until now you're officially a hoarder, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the interesting thing is that obviously we've raised children here, 14 years. And my daughter's only 14 years old. So, she's all of the toys and everything else. And, you're so reluctant to get rid of the memories. And like, I mean, if they're willing to part with it, are we? My wife's mostly it's my wife. She's just like, we can't get rid of that. Do you remember when they used to play with this? Like, yes.
That's awesome. Well, you got to keep a couple of bins of keepsakes, but that's it. You can't keep it all. All right. Well, thanks for the update on that. I think we'll check back in with you to see how many things you put on Craigslist and offer up and give away and all those different things. So we got a note from a listener a couple of weeks ago, and over the email, we do have a feedback link on our website, archispeakpodcast.com/feedback, and you can send us a note anytime. We love to hear from listeners. And Rob Sparks wrote, "Hey guys, I love the podcast and look forward to it every week. This is a great way to start a feedback email. This is fantastic. And I'm going to read the whole thing here because I think we've got some stuff to riff off of here. Says, I'm not an architect, but I do occasional gig work in 3D and environmental design for games, so I really enjoy the conversations and hearing how you two think things through. One thing struck me from this week's podcast. In the 3D world, there's ample opportunity for not knowing what a component, procedure, or technique is called or how it works. So almost any project requires some degree of experimentation and research, as I'm sure you already know. The thing I've found is that in the communities gathered around various tools like Blender, Unreal Engine, etc., it is not uncommon for experienced artists to chastise beginner and intermediate artists for not Googling something on their own before asking for help. It is, in their view, a rite of passage. Come to think of it, this isn't unlike recent conversations you've had about young architects, quote unquote, paying their dues early on. I know it can be frustrating for experienced artists to field the same questions again and again, but at the same time, I really appreciate your comments about those with experience taking responsibility for the future of the field and nurturing those who are new. And I'm not especially experienced, but I try to help those newer than me whenever I can. Anyway, I just wanted to add an adjacent experience to your conversation and also say that I'm slightly jealous that someone might just call up and say, what do you call this thing? So I thought that was really interesting. And I just think about it with my own kids, and how many times have your kids just gone off and done something in some weird, to you way, and you just said, why didn't you just ask me first?
Yeah. Although I will say what I sort of live by both my very first boss out of college, as well as my father, who would always say, well, did you look it up first? Or did you, in my boss's case, where he would say, I would come down and I would say, hey, you tasked me to work through this detail and I need some help. And he was just like, well, have you done your research? Have you, looked it up? Have you gone to the manufacturer's websites? Have you done this? Have you done that? Do all of that first. Try it, come down, and then we'll walk through it. And the cool thing is that he at least let me try the weird way, the whatever way, kind of like, what you're talking about with your kids is that, in a way that is unusual or weird to like in the normal way of doing things, and would let me at least just, trial and error, and then come down and we would sit there and we would walk through it and all that other stuff. Now, I'm a little bit different than that, where I will, task somebody out with doing something in the office and knowing that they may not necessarily know, but I do want to let them try. But I'm always right there, like, just when I'm tasking them, I'm like, please, if you have any questions, if you're unsure of how to do this task, don't just sit there and spin your wheels and, try to, figure it out through osmosis, but, try to come to me and let me know if you've got any questions. Just come to me and we'll walk through, and I'll tell you how to do it, but also like the why we're doing it, and, show you examples and everything else. And basically kind of like, be that bit of encyclopedia of like, okay, I asked you to do something. Why did I ask you to do that?
Yeah, there's so many thoughts running through my head about this because their architects bill money for their time. And there are and I'm coming at this from a larger firm perspective, medium-sized, large firm perspective, where there are standards in place for a lot of things that nobody knows about because everybody sucks at capturing that knowledge and putting it somewhere where somebody can easily find it. So we're kind of constantly reinventing the wheel anyways, and there's a lot of margin built into the time that we spend, the quote unquote time that we spend on projects. And so, like, I get it, especially with younger folks who don't know the ropes and haven't done this building type before, or haven't done that construction type before, or haven't used Revit the way that the office uses Revit before. They use it the way that they learned it themselves off YouTube or whatever. And so there is a lot of kind of quote unquote time wasted on projects that is totally fine. And yet, like, we're always scrambling to meet the deadlines, and we're always squeezing our fees even harder, and we're always trying to spend less and less time on projects. And so there's this huge tug of war kind of going on. And what's funny is like the stuff that Rob is talking about in his email. Like, I think about programmers, and there's this great website out there called Stack Overflow. And it's like a global community of people who have solved problems and put the answers in one place for everybody to use. They're really good at sharing this kind of information. I don't know that we have that for architecture, right? So I don't even think firms have that for themselves. I know you guys have the Square. You mentioned it in the last episode of your kind of intranet, and I'm sure that it either is or could be a repository for a lot of this kind of stuff. But is it the kind of place people even go to look for answers? Like this is where things just it's such a weird thing.
Well, so we have a group called the Technical Excellence Group, which is both an email list as well as a place on the Square for people to go to. And at the very least, if they go to that, then there's a link for them to like click on the email and basically send their question off into the ether. And it comes to, like more senior folks like myself and a bunch of, very talented, very smart, senior PMs, senior PAs, to kind of help them through and guide them through. But it's also a place where we do have our office standards for, like basic templates, family, where we keep families if needed, because we don't obviously throw all of the families that we have into, our template. We just, put them in as needed. They've been, kind of like cleaned, reviewed, audited, and all of that other stuff, so that, you're not like bringing in any viruses. But I'm diverging right now. But so we do have that. But I feel like some of the best ways to learn that is just through the conversation, engaging people. And I find that there is still, it was prevalent when we were kids, but it was prevalent that people don't feel comfortable asking because they don't feel comfortable. And let me just use me as an example. I hated not knowing something, but I also hated the impression that other people would look upon me as, man, he doesn't know how to do that. How does he not know how to do that? And then you're
an imposter.
But as I've grown older in my career, older in my life, and a parent and everything else, I realized that you don't know everything. You don't know everything immediately off the bat, and you need to learn it. And the thing about it is that, places like this, and YouTube and all of these other things are places for people to feel comfortable with it. And so sometimes, we have a lot of people in our office who will go to Google or YouTube or whatever to really kind of like look up, some of the things that we're asking them to do. And they'll get it to a point and then they'll come to us and go from there.
Let's take a quick break to share more about our sponsors. Systems and standard operating procedures. You already know that's how to build a profitable business and find the freedom you want. You need systems and procedures. But you struggle with choosing the systems you need most and how to implement those systems quickly so you can get back to doing what you love most. The Designing Your Business Masterclass series was created by an acclaimed architect and business consultant, Douglas Teager, FAIA, to help fellow architects and engineers run their firms more profitably while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Douglas grew from a solo practitioner to become managing partner of his 30-plus person firm, and then later sold his firm so he can do what he does today, helping architects be more successful at Teager Consulting. On the third Wednesday of every month, Douglas dives deep into an essential topic that will strengthen the profitability of your firm and make it sustainable for growth in the years to come. Register now for the Designing Your Business Masterclass with Douglas Teager at bqe.com/masterclass and start implementing powerful systems for the profitability you need and the freedom you want. Every live masterclass session includes AIA continuing education credit, and when you visit bqe.com/masterclass, you'll have access to the full library of past sessions on demand. The Designing Your Business Masterclass is free, and it's brought to you by our friends at BQE, the makers of BQE Core, the software that makes it easy to manage your projects and people for maximum productivity and ultimate profitability. Register now for the next Designing Your Business Masterclass at bqe.com/masterclass. That's bqe.com/masterclass. And now let's get back to our conversation.
We had a similar group, and our group on the internet, on the intranet, was called The Source, and it was supposed to be like the source for questions and answers in a technical manner. And it was also kind of staffed by, or the hope that it would be staffed by, the senior PAs in the firm, because they're the ones who touched a lot of projects and they've solved a lot of problems over their career. And they would not engage. They would not because again, like, one of the other competing things here is every project that you're working on is competing for your time. And so I'm just wondering, like you said, you're on the group in your office. How do you set aside time to go in and answer those questions? And are you doing it in a timely way? Do you see it actually working? Are people getting answers? Because I totally agree. Like, the fastest way to get the answers you're looking for is to ask somebody. And if they don't know, they probably know who does know, because they've either been in the firm for a long time, or they know somebody who's attempted to solve a similar problem in a similar way. There's always kind of the Hail Mary of Google or whatever, but the pre-Hail Mary, the first Hail Mary, is sending an email to the whole office and saying, hey, does anybody have any experience with this? But those are kind of last resorts, right? I think the thing to do first is to ask somebody, and that could be on the internet or it could be a personal conversation. The problem with it being a personal conversation is the information never goes anywhere beyond that conversation. And so, like, this is why I say we kind of suck at knowledge capture. Even if the answers do exist, people do have them, they do transfer that information through mentorship and through these kinds of opportunities that you're talking about. But then it doesn't go anywhere beyond that. And I feel like, what do we do about this, man? Because, like, in Rob's example, he's like, people basically assume you are going to Google it first. And there are great tutorials out there for everything that's ever been done. But is it the way that your office uses it? Is it using the standard naming conventions and the vetted Revit families and the assemblies that we use because these are the ones that our contracts, our QA will actually support? Man, it's so complex. It's a tricky thing, but I would prefer that somebody didn't Google it first, because I feel like, man, you're just you could get any answer and just assume it's right because it's on the internet, and it could be completely wrong from what you actually need to do based on what your office does. I mean, it's complicated. I think that there's so many ways people could approach, and everybody in an office, especially in a large office, is actually going to approach it differently. There's there's different, there's extroverts, there's introverts, there's people who do feel like imposters, there's people who feel like there's no stupid question, there's bosses who are all over the spectrum, right? Supervisors and teammates who are the types who will expect you to try to figure it out on your own. And then there's also the ones who are like, why didn't you ask me? Because I could have told you in 2 minutes and you took 2 hours to figure this out. It's complicated. There's no easy answer here, but I do feel like when it comes to architecture, again, we're bad at capturing and tagging this knowledge. And that's not going to happen anytime soon. It's a heavy lift for any firm to try to do this. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but I do really think that it is about just kind of finding the right people that you can ask the questions, who you build trust in a relationship with over time. And they're just kind of on call for you. And it doesn't mean you're bugging them all the time, but they are the ones that you go to first when you're looking for an answer.
Well, we've talked about this in the past, um, spe- specifically regarding like the research and development phase of in architecture that just doesn't exist. And part of that research and development is the development of knowledge in, especially when you're just coming into a profession that you don't know it from scooping ice cream. And there needs to be, but unfortunately, and especially now with the way that everybody needs staff. And so everybody that I talk to are so understaffed and so overworked and don't have the people to help them out. So this phase, stage, or whatever we want to call it, of trying to develop the young professionals' skills and mentoring them and showing them and letting them use a project, a real-time project, to try a trial and error a couple times, just doesn't exist because we don't have the time for them to like fail. And so when you sit around and you talk to people, it's just like, oh, it's time for staffing. Hey, this person needs something to do. And they're like, well, how much experience do they have? Oh, well, they're just out of school. I'm like, well, I'm like swamped, but I don't want them. And
Yeah,
it's just
totally. That's a very real thing. Yeah,
very real thing.
right.
Very, very real thing. And that's the thing that just really pains me a lot of times. And I apologize a lot to like young staff when we're on a project and I'm kind of like pushing them, pushing them, pushing them. And sometimes I was like, look, I never want you to feel like I'm giving up on you. But sometimes if I can't get to you, it's just because of the demands that everything are going on. And I feel bad when I'm not able to like,
Yeah, totally.
get them the help and the knowledge seeking that they're, and just the development that they're looking for. I feel really bad when I'm not able to do that, because that to me is in a way far more important than, meeting a deadline, because at the end of the day, we'll be able to meet more deadlines when that person is knowledged up.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about like the medium to large size firms. I really feel like this is where there needs to be somebody dedicated. It's kind of like that piece of junk IT help desk for IT questions, right? But you need that for architecture. You need that for the business of architecture. You need it for detailing. You need it for code. You need it for all of those things. And you need dedicated people who sit at the freaking terminal and just field those questions and get people connected or get them answers all day long, every day. And that is an investment that the firms have to make if you seriously want to cut the amount of time people are spending looking on what I call the black hole of Google for how to do something, right? Like that is what you actually have to invest in to do that. And the flip side of the coin is, man, I feel for those really small firms because and we've all experienced this at one time or another. You've either been the giver or the receiver of this kind of an interaction, but it's like, how the hell do you not know how to do this, right? And it's like I've definitely seen architects venting or heard them venting directly over the phone or in person about, I can't believe somebody graduated school and doesn't know how to do this quote unquote simple thing. I see that all the time. And that's usually, like, especially in the small firms, like, you can't dedicate all of your time to just fielding the questions, right? You have to run the business. You have to meet the clients. You have to do the presentations. You have to collect the money. You have to do the invoicing. You have to go to the plan review. Like, you've got to do all of those things. And so the answer is some global repository of great information, but that we all know that that doesn't really exist.
Because then, the alternative is, them going to that black hole of Google. In larger firms, medium-sized, larger firms do have the luxury of being able to have people, especially in like the lean times when you want to keep staff on, but you may not have that. And we've done that in the past or we've dedicated certain people, just like you guys had in your past firm, where you have dedicated people who are there to essentially help facilitate, the digital side of practice, or developing details, or at least, like populating, like, good details and all that other stuff as a way to create a basis of design, or, some kind of like, here, your project is similar to this. Look at that and see how you can change it or modify that a little bit, but using the rules that are in this, detail here. However you want to explain it. I mean, the medium and larger firms do have that luxury of being able to do that, where smaller firms and sole practitioners don't really have, that opportunity. And so a lot of times when you're working for a smaller firm and you are asked to do something, that was, going back to my, first, I don't know, maybe not the first day on the job, but let's just say the first week on the job, when I was asked to do some detailing of an eave condition. And I had to remind myself what's an eave. Didn't necessarily have to remind myself, but just, those are things that we didn't do. I mean, we didn't do a lot of like eave detailing and things like that. I mean, the firm that I had interned with, it was all flat roofs. So, ask me how to do a parapet, ask me how to do a flat roof. Those were things that I did learn how to do. But now ask me how to do a pitched roof. I struggled.
Seriously.
My first week I was struggling with it. It was like, how do I detail a pitched roof? Like, and it was just, he wanted me to kind of like struggle. But the one thing that was kind of interesting, he didn't want me to struggle as like, and I don't have time for you kind of thing. It was just like, let me see what you can do. Let me see what you can come up with. And, from there. And, and so I basically just went back to good old architectural graphic standards.
Yeah.
And
right.
worked through that, and then just try to
There's
modify
the
it.
repository I'm talking about. I'm talking about that right there. I mean, it's way more complicated than that, right? But that's the idea.
Well, let me ask you a question. Does that even exist anymore?
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. If it does, I want to know what it is. I want to know what it is. Like, I know there's different. The other issue here is that no one firm can do this for everybody. It has to be somebody removed who is working on the profession. Like, this seriously should be an AIA type of a thing. And not that they're the best to do it, because I think a bunch of people who work at the AIA are not architects, right? But they're association type people. But you've got to have the place that cares about everybody at all levels and all project types and all market segments and all regions and climate zones, and like, because it is that nuanced, right? But when you're talking about a California architect doing a project in Colorado, like that matters, right? If you're talking about a Maryland architect doing a project in Missouri, like, it's different. You can't just apply the same information everywhere. And so architecture, capital A architecture, the profession, does not have this. I don't think that they do, like we used to with the graphic standards. In that, we all know it was too limited, right? It's kind of foundational, and it points in the right direction, but it's not the kind of, it just doesn't go far enough, nor could it. It would be an entire encyclopedia, a shelf full of graphic standards. And obviously the internet could solve this, but again, nobody has the time or the money to invest, and nor could they do this for everybody. It just that I just don't see that happening. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but it is interesting to think of how far behind our profession is, because there are other professions who do this extremely well.
Well, I will say that I am on graphicstandards.com, and it is the Wiley Publishing architectural graphic standards, the ones that we know and love. There is an annual membership or annual subscription fee of $139 or $14.95 monthly, and it has AIA endorsed assets, downloadable CAD drawings, and then unlimited access to all the different content that you would find in the 12th edition of the Architectural Graphic Standards. So, interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's also just another place to get stuff, right? Like, and it doesn't have everything. Yeah, I mean, it's not the silver bullet that everybody wants.
Well, so that's the thing, is just like, okay, so let me go back to that Eve condition situation that I was dealing with. So I went to Architectural Graphic Standards, looked at what I could look there. Then I went to the manufacturer and tried to find some details because it was a metal roof, the metal roof that we were going to specify, looking at some of the details there. Then I looked at, went and looked at, some simple detailing so that was like Architectural Graphic Standards, then the Swedes catalogs. Then it was SMACNA, the sheet metal industries detail book. I'm sure you know it, and why I'm blanking on the actual full name of what SMACNA stands for. But anyway, yeah. So, but I mean, and I took all of that and I kind of like weaved it together to something that, sort of worked. And to be quite honest with you, I actually did a pretty good job. And there was just some waterproofing things that he went over with me to kind of like show me how to basically, make it far more waterproof than apparently the sponge that I drew. The overall like shell of everything was good to go, but it was just so, but, I had him at least explain to me the resources that I could go and check, trusted resources that, he's used as tried and true methods of, trying to work through all of those details. Whereas right now, we don't sit down with anybody and talk to them about where are the tried and true resources to go out there, whether it's somebody within the office or it's certain manuals or it's this repository on our the details and stuff that we've used on other projects in the past and things like that. But, these are the things that people are like struggling to find, where that is, and so go back to like his letter, his letter is basically talking about this rite of passage. It's just like the suffering or the berating and all of this other stuff is this rite of passage. And I used to joke of just like, you're new on the project. You're going to be doing toilet room plans. I would rarely ever make anybody do toilet room plans unless I really actually needed people to do them. Other than that, it was like, I want you to sit down next to me and let's start working through some things together. I want you to learn and be able to contribute pretty quickly to all of this.
Right.
And it's just, I don't believe in that practice. That, and trust me, how many toilet room plans I've drawn in my lifetime because that was
too many,
because that was the rite of passage.
Yeah, I know. Paying your dues, right?
I don't believe in the pay. I believe in knowledge sharing. It's not paying your dues anymore. We don't have the time. It's just ridiculous now.
Yeah. Well, pick up the phone and call somebody.
It's that hazing. Ooh, you're new. Hey, haha. We used to,
terrible.
In the Army, oh my gosh, hazing the new guy was merciless. Go to the command tent and ask them for a box of grid squares. you know,
I don't know what that means, but
neither did they because it doesn't exist. I mean,
oh,
grid squares are like, the grid on the map, or, hey, go see the first sergeant and ask him for a TRWE device. You just like, if you slow down a minute, you're like, I'm looking for a TRWE device. And he would lay it to you. And then, of course, when you came back, you were like, ha ha, funny, it's a tree. And then, everybody's, of course, rolling all over the place. And toilet room plans were that kind of like TRWE device kind of mentality. It's just like, I'm going to get you. You're going to be doing RCPs and toilet room plans and door schedules and all the crap that I don't want to do.
Yeah, right. Well, what's the answer? I mean, man, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm glad that Rob shared his perspective coming from another industry, because other industry, there are some other industries who do have it figured out a lot better than we do, and I hope that we can pull from those other models because we definitely don't know everything, right? We can use the great stuff from the other industries, the adjacent industries, and apply them to what we're doing. And I hope that we can pull together and do something like that. But anyway, that's I don't even know where we go from here. It's kind of disillusioning.
Well, the good thing is that, and we've talked about this, because we see this big, I don't know if it's the good thing or bad thing or whatever the thing is, but, we see this gap, this lack of knowledge sharing and everything in our profession, and we can use whatever excuse that we have of why we don't do it to the best of our abilities. But there are people out there who are either frustrated architects who left the profession to try to, want to stay in the profession and maybe help grow. But I mean, if I haven't learned one thing from your Troxel podcast is that there are a lot of people out there that are helping our industry to fill in the blanks for all of the things that we've left undone. If we're not going to do it, somebody else will. And we're going to have to just take what we get because we didn't do it. And so it's either we realize that, we need to take an active role in positive change and, this positive knowledge sharing and things like that, which I do really think that if used to its fullest extent, Our Square or your intranet or the source or all of these other things, if they're really used to full extent, could be a good start for that. But I also see that, the AIA could take a great lead in doing something like that, that it's not just knowledge sharing firm just for each individual firm, but something profession wide. Something that truly does improve the knowledge share of the profession.
Yeah, I agree. And I know they attempt to do that with things like the knowledge communities that exist out there. I can't remember how many of them are there, but there's a good number of them. But they're still kind of like forum based, right? So you could definitely search that information, but it's not kind of organized in a way that makes it easy to look things up. So I do think that even there's room to modernize the system and make it a lot easier to find the information that we're looking for.
Yeah. Yes. I agree.
Well, thanks, Rob, for sending in your comment. We appreciate it. It gave us something else to talk about for sure. And I think this is a problem that the industry needs to figure out how to tackle. And I mean, you mentioned my other podcast. There are a lot of people on there too, trying to do that, just like you said. And I'm trying to do that with the work that we're doing at Tech. And I left working in the profession to work on the profession because I do honestly believe that it takes kind of a third party, not a single firm, to be able to have this kind of impact at these larger scales that affect our whole industry. So that's what we're trying to do there as well. Anyway, until next time, man. Yeah.
Thank you to BQE, the makers of BQE Core, for their support of this podcast episode. Visit bqe.com/masterclass to register for the next Designing Your Business Masterclass. Thanks for listening. This show is part of the Gable Media Podcast Network. See all the shows at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what we're doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and don't forget to share it with your friends. We'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at archispeakpodcast.com, where you can find our entire catalog of shows. Talk to you soon.